bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured. A beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. Hine matovu manahim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu manahim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, hine matov. Yai dai 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 dai. Hine matov, hine matov. Yai dai 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 dai. Hine matovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good and how pleasant it is that brothers and sisters dwell together. So welcome to our Kabbalat Shabbat service here at Congregation Or Tzafon. I'm Bill Alexander, and I'm leading the service tonight. Tonight's service is special for me for several reasons. I will be observing the yard site this coming week for my father, Isaac Alexander, who passed away on April 22nd, 2004. And we'll be saying Kaddish for him tonight as well as for others who are observing the yard site of a loved one. Tonight is also the 1-month anniversary of the birth of Linda's and my second grandson. So as one of our congregants, Leslie Moss, pointed out to me, tonight I'm celebrating a circle of life between the birth of our grandson and the death of his great-grandfather. Thank you, Leslie, for that beautiful observation. Finally, tonight is special for me because my sister, Ann Lockmiller, has joined our service from Duval, Washington. So I want to extend a special welcome to my sister and to anyone else out on the YouTube universe who may be a stranger to our synagogue. The Torah tells us to welcome the stranger into our home because we were strangers in the land of Egypt. So tonight I welcome all of you congregants and strangers alike to join us in community and prayer during our Kabbalat Shabbat service. So we will light the Shabbat candles now, and for those of you with a Mishkan Tefillah Sidur, please join us on page 2 and rise while I light the Shabbat candles. Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahad likner shel Shabbat. Amen. Please remain standing as we sing the Kiddush. So please turn to page 5 and sing along with me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu zicharon lemahaseh bereshit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Please be seated. Okay, and here again, if you've got the prayer book, please turn to page 12 as we sing Lechu Noranana. Lechu Noranana, Lechu Noranana, Lechu Norana l'Adonai. Lechu Noranana, Lechu Noranana, Lechu Norana l'Adonai. Naria, Naria, Litzur Vishenu, Nekad Mafana Bitodam. Naria, Naria, Litzur Vishenu, Bizmirot Naria lo. Lechu Noranana, Lechu Noranana, Lechu Norana l'Adonai. Lechu Norana, Lechu Norana, Lechu Norana l'Adonai. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. Let's turn to page 20. And we will do L'chadodi. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. L'chadodi, L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. Shamor v'zakor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu el yamchu chad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, Leshem ultiferet v'litilam. L'chadodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala, lechadoli dilakra kala. Pnei Shabbat nikabala, likrat Shabbat lechuvenilcha, ki mekor habracha meherosh michadem nisucha sof machabaka shava techila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Boi vishalom ataret balam, Gam tisika utsochola tohoch emuneim am segula boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Okay, so I would like to read a poem by Alden Solovi called For the Arrival of Shabbat. Well of life, bless my heart with the gifts of Shabbat, the presence of your love in my pulse, your glory in my chest, and your wonder in my breath. Bless my eyes with the gifts of Shabbat, seeing the beauty of the candlesticks, the Kiddush cups, and the chalot. Bless my lips with the gifts of Shabbat, rejoicing in song and prayer, singing melodies ancient and new. Bless my ears with the gifts of Shabbat, hearing hymns and praises, the nigunim of old, and blessed words of Torah. Bless my soul with the gifts of Shabbat, awe and thanksgiving, calm and surrender, beauty, righteousness, and peace. Let these gifts descend gently on all your people Israel, so that together, wherever we may be, in one voice from the four corners of the earth we sing, Boachem la shalom, come in peace. Malachei HaShalom, messengers of peace. Malachei Elyon, angels of the Most High. So please turn to page 24 and join me in singing Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Barchuni l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Seitkem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. So now let's turn to page 146 and let's stand as we say the Baruch Hu. Okay. Baruch hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praised be Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever. Please be seated. Let's turn to page 147, which is right next to the Baruch Hu, and let's say the Ma'ariv Aravim together in English. Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and wisdom. Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures. Though all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. And let's turn to the next page, page 148, and let's read the Ahavat Olam together in English. In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world. In each age we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment we stand face to face with truth. In each age we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. So next we're going to do the Shema, but before we stand to do the Shema, I like to remind myself, and others hopefully feel the same way, of why is it that we say the Shema? Well, the Shema is taken from the Torah. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's Deuteronomy 6:4. Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, is a call to worship and is a prayer that serves as one of the centerpieces of our Jewish prayer services. The Shema is important because it reminds us of the key principles of our faith. There is only one God. The Shema also places emphasis on the covenant that God made with the Jewish people, the need to follow the laws laid down by God in the Sinai. In many of our homes, the Shema is written on a scroll and placed inside a mezuzah. The mezuzah is placed on a door frame. By touching the mezuzah, every time we enter our homes, we show faith and our faith and our love to God. So the tradition of the Shema is to focus one's mind uniquely on the prayer. To do so, many people close their eyes. Closing my eyes allows me to focus on the music and the words, and for me, the Shema becomes a meditation. Please rise and join me in the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Please be seated. Okay, let's turn the page one more time to page 150. and we'll read the Ve'ahavta together in Hebrew. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol modecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha uv'lektecha v'aderek uv'shafbecha uv'kumecha. Ukshartam laot al yadecha v'hayu latotafot bein einecha. Uktavtam al mezuzot betecha uvish arecha. Lama'an tizkaru va'atzitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kidoshim Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz. Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. And let's turn to page 152. Just keep on turning there. And we're going to do the Micha Mocha, okay? Micha Mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha nehedar b'chodesh. Nora tehilot o seifela, Nora tehilot o seifela. Who is like you, God, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Let's turn the page one more time, and we'll sing Vishamru. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, b'nei Yisrael, ohot hit le'olam v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamin Asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'oretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi shavat vayanafash Shavat Yavanafash, Shavat Vayanafash, Vishamru, V'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat lahazot, et ha-Shabbat ledoretam berit olam. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It's a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. So next we're going to do the tefillah, and this is where the real praying begins. And like the Shema, I like to remind myself, why is it that we say the tefillah or the Amidah? The Amidah is another centerpiece of Jewish worship. It's often referred to as the standing prayer, as it's always recited while standing and facing Jerusalem. It embodies the aspirations of the community and its individual members. The Amidah is a person's opportunity to approach God in a private prayer and should therefore be said quietly. The words must be audible to oneself, but one should be careful to pray softly enough not to disturb others. This prayer consists of 19 blessings, which can be split into 3 sections: praising God, asking for help, and thanksgiving. So let's praise God, ask for God's help in our daily endeavors, and be thankful as we say the Amidah and continue praying silently. We'll finish on the middle of page 167 with the singing of O Say Shalom. So please rise and join me. Adonai sifai titak uhufia gita hilateka. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oh, say shalom bin Romav, Huya say shalom aleinu, ve'ol kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oh, ya say shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'ol kol Yisrael, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Please be seated. As I continue my personal journey at Congregation Or Tzafon as a lay service leader, I'm reminded over and over that the Hebrew Bible isn't just an early history of our faith. It's also an ancient roadmap on how biblical Israelites should live a righteous life. And while much of the Torah deals with meaty issues that can have life-affirming or crushing consequences, we modern Jews can see some of the topics as mundane, outdated, and downright oppressive. This week's Parsha is called Tazria Metzora. It's Leviticus chapter 12:1 to 15:33. It deals with clean versus unclean, especially in terms of childbirth, sexual relations, and diseases of the skin. It even has instructions on how to deal with diseases that afflict the physical structure of one's home. When reading this week's Parsha, it's not difficult for me to see the afflictions described in Tazria Metzora as not just physical afflictions, but social and cultural as well. In reading portions of the Torah, we can clearly see it as a reflection of the patriarchal nature of Israelite society. Patriarchy wasn't then and isn't now the sole province of Judaism. We see examples in many of the world's religions and societies. But in reading Tazria Metzora, there is one passage at the beginning of the Parsha that stands out as both an ancient example and a reminder of the challenges facing modern women. Let's read a passage from Erica Davis. She wrote an article published on the website myjewishlearning.org called "Where Childbirth Gets Short Shrift." She asks the question, why is childbirth nestled between dietary restrictions and skin diseases? And she continues, between the laws of kashrut and the laws about people with leprosy, we find a snippet of Torah that discusses the laws of childbirth. In chapter 12 of Leviticus, we learn that after a woman gives birth, she is rendered unclean for a period of time that is determined by the gender of her child. A woman who gives birth to a male child will remain in a state of impurity for 33 days, while a woman who gives birth to a female child will remain in a state of impurity for 66 days, double the time. Why this difference of time for children of differing sexes? And what does it mean that we squish birthing women in between other sins and unpleasant things like eating animals that crawl on the earth and leprosy? In the March 24, 2014 edition of the American Jewish World Services online magazine, Baruch Levine, a contemporary Bible scholar, contextualizes the Torah's biblical directives regarding birth and purity in the milieu of the ancient Near East. He says, although the new mother was a source of joy to the community and her new child a blessing, she generated anxiety, as did all aspects of fertility and reproduction in ancient society. The childbearing mother was particularly vulnerable, and her child was in danger too, since infant mortality was widespread in pre-modern societies. By declaring the new mother impure, susceptible, the community sought to protect and shelter her. In ancient times, concern for the welfare of the mother and the child was most often expressed as fear of destructive, demonic, or anti-life forces. It is reasonable to assume that similar anxieties were current among the ancient Israelites as well. Thus, chapter 12 presents a seemingly paradoxical situation, new life, but also a new threat to life. It is more likely that the doubling of the initial period of impurity and the waiting period for a female may have reflected apprehension and anticipation regarding the infant daughter's potential fertility, the expectation that she herself would someday become a new mother. While we always want to keep in mind the time and place that the Hebrew Bible was written, Baruch Levine's contextualization of Leviticus 12 feels generous at best and perhaps tone deaf at worst. Like much of the Hellenized world at that time, it's my sense that when the Hebrew Bible was codified, women were considered at best second-class citizens and at worst property, so that a woman and her girl child were seen to be of lesser value to their society than men and male children. Some scholars believe it was Aristotle's opinion that a woman was nothing more than a defective or substandard male. It's remarkable that this patriarchal and misogynistic attitude has filtered down to today's political, cultural, and economic environment. So we ask ourselves, why are women still suffering the effects of misogyny and fighting against the culture of patriarchy 2,500 years later? Why are women still fighting for the right to control their own reproductive prerogatives? Why is it that women in the U.S. are still paid 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man? The good news is this figure has risen from 60 cents in 1980. But today, women of color are still only making 62 cents for every dollar earned by a man? Why is it that women make up over 50% of this country's population, but as of September 2020, only 7% of Fortune 500 companies had women CEOs? Why is it that women make up only 25% of the members of the U.S. Congress? Why is it in this age of increased awareness of the inequities faced by all women that the NC2A women's basketball tournament is still underfunded and resourced compared to the men's NC2A basketball tournament? Why is it in the world's wealthiest country we don't have universal daycare that would free women from the need to make a decision between motherhood and taking on an expanded and more active leadership role outside their home? Why is it today that women face a hostile and misogynistic work environment even in supposedly enlightened and liberal places like California? The answer is clear. Our society is still struggling to move past the gender-based biases in the cultural, political, and economic environment that perpetuates inequities that go back 2.5 millennia. And why is our society struggling to move past gender-based biases? The answer is that by and large, men in power refuse to give up and or share that power with women in general, and particularly women of color. I personally approve of the number of women President Biden has appointed to major cabinet and policy positions in our government. But it's not enough for us to leave it to government. Men at all levels of business and government need to understand the importance of equitably sharing power and actively supporting the advancement of women into decision-making positions. Men today can't get away with occasionally changing a diaper or making a family dinner and assuming they've done enough. Men also need to support free universal child care and preschool education, public and private corporate employment policies that enable women to compete on an equal footing with men, the passing of state and national legislation that mandates equal pay for equal work, and actively lobbying lawmakers to support the re-ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Linda and I raised two beautiful daughters. They've grown into strong, self-confident, and economically independent women who are loved, respected, and rewarded by their peers. But will they ever see the day when they themselves aren't seen and treated as second-class citizens by many of their fellow Americans? It pains me to see these inequities and this disrespect heaped upon American women. However, organizations like the Center for American Progress, the American World Jewish Service, the American Association of University Women, and the Women's March all exist to further women's rights and work for the time when gender and racial equity will become a reality, not just a dream. But as I've already mentioned, the burden of this effort cannot rest on women's shoulders alone. Men must do more. Men must be talking about these issues with one another and with women so we can move forward together and become a more equitable society. As Dorothy L. Sayers, the British mystery writer, said, and I quote, "Whenever you find a great man, you will find a great mother or a great wife standing behind him," or so they used to say. It would be interesting to know how many great women have had great fathers and husbands behind them. I believe we're at a tipping point. I feel, hear, and see the change in people my age, and I see it in our two daughters' peer groups. Last month, on March 8th, was International Women's Day, and every year, March is Women's History Month. I hope during March, each of you had an opportunity to stop, think, appreciate, commemorate, and celebrate the equal but often unseen role of women in today's America. Let's look forward to the time when we no longer make societal or economic distinctions based upon the color of someone's skin, the manner in which they worship God, or their gender identity. Amen. Okay, let's turn back to page 117. And let's read together at the top of page 117, When Justice Burns. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when to the last full measure of selfless devotion we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives and we can begin to change the world. And then you live in our hearts, and we, through righteousness, behold your presence. I'd like to read another poem by Alden Solovi. This is called The Axis of Healing. Your heart is the axis of healing, drawing passion and fire from the hot core of the earth, drawing energy and possibility from the pulsing edge of the universe, drawing light from the shadows and the secret brilliance that surrounds us, so that your mind is clear and your body radiates love. Your heart is the axis of healing, drawing empathy from the pain of others, drawing inspiration when you witness sorrow, transformed into hope so that your deeds are pure, your hands strong and tender, and your life becomes the medicine that heals the world. I'd like to now have us turn our prayers to those in our community in need of physical or spiritual healing. Let the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless these members of our community. Robin Cohen, Lorraine Friedman, Diana Heller, Barbara Kurtzman, David Podolsky, Cheryl Schellub, John Sitters, Ellen Weingarten, Evelyn Gross, Sam Macara, great-nephew of cricket handler, Chip Kurtzman, Shervin Golian, and Toby Shear. And now at this time, for anyone at home who has loved ones or people they know who they feel are in need of healing, please mention their names now. Send them all comfort and relief speedily in our days, and grant them a complete healing of body, mind, and spirit. Blessed are you, source of life, who helps us to bring light where there is darkness and healing where there is brokenness. So let's turn to page 253, in the middle of 253, and we'll sing Mi Sheberach together. Mi Sheberach Avotenu Mechor HaBracha Laimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi Sheberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha La'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalameah, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Let's turn to page 282 as we say the Aleinu, and we'll close the doors of the ark. Aleinu shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shehu noter shemayim vayoshed aretz, umoshav yakaro v'shamayim mimol, ushinat huzo bigovev Eloheinu ein od, v'anachnu korim umishtachavim uvmodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Let us now praise the sovereign of the universe and proclaim the greatness of the Creator who spread out the heavens and established the earth, whose glory is revealed in the heavens above, and whose greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, there is none else. Therefore we bow in awe and thanksgiving before the one who is sovereign over all, the Holy and the Blessed One. Please be seated. Okay, let's turn to page 291 and read together at the top of the page. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and our words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one, whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. And now our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, and for those who are observing a yahrzeit of a loved one. This Shabbat, we remember Melody Aroner Katz, sister of Michael Aroner, Herman Brown, grandfather of Jackie Zucker, Fanny Finkel, grandmother of Linda Pryor, Ann Finkel, aunt of Ann Pryor, Brandon Hirsch, father-in-law of Teresa Cullen Hirsch, Carmen Froese, grandmother of Rita Becker, Larry Hirsch, husband of Teresa Cullen Hirsch, Jonathan Jacobs, nephew of Jane Sachs, Irving Alexander, my father, father of Bill Alexander and Ann Lockmiller, Abraham Goldstein of blessed memory. And we take into our hearts all those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. I invite anybody at this time who is observing a yahrzeit to light a yahrzeit candle. Please rise and join me in saying the mourner's Kaddish. That's at the top of page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divra kirute, bi'amlich malchute, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chaye dekol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'yamru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Ul Almei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitbar V'yitroman V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudisha Brichu Leila Min Chol Birchata V'rashata Tushbechata V'nechamata Da Miran Bialma V'yomru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yakol Yisrael V'yomru Amen. Osei Shalom Bin Romav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'yakol Yisrael V'yomru Amen. You may be seated. Okay. At this time, I'd like to say a prayer for our country. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and in spirit. Amen. Okay, we have some announcements. We have some birthdays today and the rest of this coming week. Sam Golian has a birthday today. Happy birthday. Charlotte Golian tomorrow, April 17th. Drew and Hattie Daner on Sunday, April 18th. Robin Cohen, Tuesday, April 20. Phil Yeskel, Wednesday, April 21st. And McKenna Freitas, Thursday, April 22nd. And happy birthday to you all. And I have one more announcement. We will be honoring Rabbi Janice at a virtual Zoom gala on Sunday, May 23rd at 5 p.m. This is an opportunity to gather together and honor our rabbi who does so much, not only for Ort Safon, but for everyone in the SLO community. We urge you to go onto our Shul Cloud website and click on the Gala tab for more information and make a tribute, which will include your Zoom registration. Tributes must be submitted by May 3rd, please. Our committee has worked long and hard at making this a success, and we know that your support in showing Rabbi Janice the honor she so deserves will be well appreciated. For any questions, feel free to call or email Jerome Becker. So finally, I'd like to give thanks to all of the people who made this live stream possible tonight. First and foremost, to Cindy Dixon Levine, who is our talented musical accompanist, to Xander Peterson, who is running the video feed for our live stream, and Jerome Becker, Nakshon Margalit, Leslie Moss, and last but not least, our Rabbi Janice Mayring. I'd like to finish with one final prayer. And if you turn to page 360, you can read along with me. This is one of my favorite prayers and actually one of my favorite songs done by the Byrds, if you folks go back that far. I do. It's my gray hair. Okay, so here we go. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to reap. A time to kill, a time to heal. A time to laugh, a time to weep. A time to build up, a time to break down. A time to dance, a time to mourn. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time of love, a time of hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Thank you for being here.